Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Chapter 14. By and by, when we got up, we turned over the truck the gang had stole off of the wreck and found boots, blankets, and clothes and all sorts of other things, and a lot of books, and a spyglass, and 3 boxes of seegars. We hadn't ever been this rich before in neither of our lives. The seegars was prime. We laid off all the afternoon in the woods talking, and me reading the books and having a general good time. I told Jim all about what happened inside the wreck and at the ferry boat, and I said these kinds of things was adventures. But he said he didn't want no more adventures. He said that when I went in the Texas and he crawled back to get on the raft and found her gone, he nearly died, because he judged it was all up with him anyway. It could be fixed, for if he didn't get saved, he would get drowned. And if he did get saved, whoever saved him would send him back home, so as to get the reward, and then Miss Watson would sell him south for sure. Well, he was right. He was most always right. He had an uncommon level head for a nigger. I read considerable to Jim about kings and dukes and earls and such, and how gaudy they dressed, and how much style they put on, and called each other your majesty and your grace and your lordship and so on, instead of mister. And Jim's eyes bugged out, and he was interested. He says, "I didn't know there was so many of 'em. I ain't heard none of 'em scarcely, but old King Solomon, unless you count them kings in the pack of cards. How much do a king get?" "Get?" I says. "Why, they get $1,000 a month if they want it. They can have just as much as they want. Everything belongs to them." "Oh, ain't that gay? And what do they got to do, Huck?" "They don't do nothing." "Why, how you talk. They just set around." "No. Is that so?" "Of course it is. They just set around, except maybe when there's a war, and then they go to the war. But other times they just lazy around or go hawking. Just hawking and— Shh! Wait, did you hear a noise?" We skipped out and looked, but it weren't nothing but the flutter of a steamboat's wheel away down, coming around the point. So we come back. "Yes," says I. "And other times, when things is dull, they fuss with the Parliament, and if everybody don't go just so, he whacks their heads off. But mostly they hang around the harem." "Round a which?" "Harem." "What's the harem?" "The place where he keeps his wives. Don't you know about the harem? Solomon had one. He had about 1,000,000 wives." "Why, yes, that's so. I done forgot it. A harem's a boarding house, I reckon. Most likely they has rackety times in the nursery, and I reckon the wives quarrels considerable, and that increased the racket. They say that Solomon the wisest man that ever lived. Well, I don't take no stock in that, because why would a wise man want to live in the middle of such blim-blamming all the time? No, indeed he wouldn't. A wise man 'd take and build a boiler factory, and then he could shut down the boiler factory when he wants to rest." "Well, but he was the wisest man anyway, because the widow told me so her own self." "Oh, I don't care what the widow say. He wasn't no wise man, nother. He had some of the dad-fetchedest ways I ever see. Does you know about that child that he was gwine to chop in two?" "Yes, the widow told me all about it." "Well, then, weren't that the beatin'est notion in the world? You just take and look at it a minute. Now, there's the stump there. That's one of the women. And here's you. That's the other one. And I's Solomon. And this here dollar bill's the child. Now, before you claims it, what does I do? Does I shin around amongst the neighbors and find out which one of you the bill do belong to, and hand it over to the right one, all safe and sound, the way that anybody that had any gumption would? No, I take and whack the bill in two, and give half of it to you and half to the other woman? That's the way Solomon was going to do with that child. Now I want to ask you, what's the use of half a bill? You can't buy nothing with it. And what's the use of half a child? I wouldn't give a dern for 1,000,000 of 'em. But hang it, Jim, you clean missed the point. Blame it, you missed it 1,000 miles. Who, me? Oh, go long. Don't talk to me about your points. I reckon I knows sense when I sees it. There ain't no sense in such a doing as that. Dispute weren't about half a child. Dispute was about a whole child. And the man that think he can settle a dispute about a whole child with half a child don't know enough to come in out of the rain. Don't talk to me about Solomon, Huck. I knows him by the back. But I tell you, you don't get the point. Oh, blame the point. I reckon I knows what I knows. And mind you, the real point is down further. It's down deeper. It lays in the way Solomon was raised. So you take a man that's got only 1 or 2 chillen. That man going to be wasteful of chillen? No, he ain't. He can't afford it. He knows how to value 'em. But you take a man that's got about 5,000,000 chillen running around the house, and is different. He as soon chop a child in two as a cat. There's plenty more. A child or two more or less wasn't no consideration to Solomon, dad fetch 'em. I never see such a nigger. If he got a notion in his head once, there weren't no getting it out again. He was the most down on Solomon of any nigger I ever see. So I went to talking about other kings and let Solomon slide. I told him about Louis XVI that got his head cut off in France long time ago, and about his little boy, the Dolphin, that would have been king, but they took and shut him up in jail. And some say he died there. Oh, poor little chap. But some say he got out and got away and come to America. Oh, that's good. But he'll be pretty lonesome. There ain't no kings here, is they, Huck? No. Well, then he can't get no situation. What he going to do? Well, I don't know. Some of them gets on the police, and some of them learns people how to talk French. Why, Huck, don't the French people talk the same way we does? No, Jim. You couldn't understand a word they said, not a single word. Well, now I be ding busted. How did that comes? I don't know, but it's so. I got some of their jabber out of a book. Suppose a man was to come to you and say, Parlez-vous Franzi? What would you think? Well, I wouldn't think nothing. I'd take and bust him over the head. That is, if he weren't white. I wouldn't allow no nigger to call me that. Shucks, it ain't calling you anything. It's only saying, do you know how to talk French? Well, then why couldn't he say it? What, he is a saying it. That's a Frenchman's way of saying it. Well, it's a blame ridiculous way, and I don't want to hear no more about it. There ain't no sense in it. Looky here, Jim. Does a cat talk like we do? No, a cat don't. Well, does a cow? No, a cow don't nother. Well, does a cat talk like a cow? Or a cow like a cat? No, they don't. It's natural and right for 'em to talk different from each other, ain't it? Course. Well, ain't it natural and right for a cat and a cow to talk different from us? Why, most surely it is. Well, then, why ain't it natural and right for a Frenchman to talk different from us? You answer me that. Well, is a cat a man, Huck? No. Well, then, there ain't no reason for a cat to talk like a man. Is a cow a man? Or is a cow a cat? No, she ain't neither of 'em. Well, then, she ain't got no business to talk like either one of 'em. Is a Frenchman a man? Yes. Well, then, Dad, blame it, why don't he talk like a man? You answer me that. I see it weren't no use wasting words. You can't learn a nigger to argue. So I quit.